I am Doomsvince, and this is day 191 of Spawn Year.
If the sudden nightmares and hallucinations don't do me in, trying to keep all this reworked, revamped, and retcon continuity straight just might. In the back of issue 91, a letter writer articulately criticizes some of the same things that have been driving me nuts all year. Glad I'm not the only one. He complains about characters repeating what they've already said in a previous issue, but McFarlane trying to spin it like it's new material, even when subplots are getting no traction at all. McFarlane responds with, "Sometimes it's good to state where the characters were before moving on." Well, A, often the characters don't move on at all, and B, this is long-form storytelling, and most issues aren't standalone stories, especially recently. So I think it's more important to make sure it isn't cumbersome to read several issues at once than to devote several of your limited pages to unnatural, in-scene recapping. Since Logan has taken over, though, it's been a non-issue. Those filler scenes are gone, and there's far, far less forced exposition and dialogue in general, so why am I even mentioning this? Well, even with all that reinforcement for 65 plus issues graciously helping me keep track of all of that oh-so-complex and involved story history, I'm having an impossible time remembering important plot points and details as the narrative really is finally starting to move along. And I'm not reading these every 30 days, I'm reading them every day. And so little actually happened in the first 50 issues, I thought I was reading the Book of Numbers. This far in, it's difficult to organize information in my head, and Doomsvince doesn't give me anything to write on besides these notebooks, so my space for notes is limited. Because I have to note what has occurred that the book either ignores now, the Spawn Clock, or has sloppily changed retroactively. Who killed Al Simmons, why Jason Wynn quit being anti-Spawn, Bulgy's ultimatum about killing Wanda if Spawn doesn't cooperate, the Freak's motivations, and mostly, what there is to remember is what people are saying, not what people are doing. Obviously, in fiction, a lot of story has to be told through dialogue, but Spawn has been presented largely as a mystery about his role in the Celestial Battle, and most of the big revelations come from characters suddenly, and often for no good reason, finally telling us something we could have known all along. What about the thing about Wanda being what Hell is actually after, or the random prophecy about some child Bootsy mentioned way back in 1638? I was being sarcastic. There's no story about Bootsy in the 17th century. It just feels to me like it's been that long. My long-winded point is that when some of this stuff finally surfaces after it's seemingly forgotten or abandoned because Hogwin is trying like the suddenly established sharp-dressed devil to turn all this nonsense into a viable, believable world, my freaking head explodes. This issue gets us back to the main narrative, reintroducing Wanda, Cyan, and Terry for the first time we've seen them since Cyan was kidnapped by the clown, pretty much. At the end, Wanda gets off the phone with a doctor and reveals to Terry that she's pregnant. A wave of so-called continuity rolled over me. Wanda is important! Bulgy really was using Spawn to get to her, and so threatening her was a badly considered bluff, I suppose. Whatever, Bulgy's incompetent, we've established this. The child Bootsy spoke of isn't Cyan like I thought for the 3 seconds I thought it might actually come into play, but Wanda's unborn child? Oh wow, this means McFarlane and Hogwin are finally paying off Spawn's shameful decision to sleep with Wanda in the guise of Terry, and... wait, no. That wasn't in the comics. That was in the TV show. Ah! It's even more impossible to keep all this straight with multiple intersecting continuities in my head, all informing each other in irritating ways. I mean, if not for the movie, we wouldn't have Jessica Priest. And if it wasn't for the animated series, I bet we wouldn't have the cliché set up for an immaculate conception. First, Spawn's the prophesized chosen one meant to bring balance to good and evil, and now there's a foretold baby, too. So that makes Spawn, Anakin Skywalker, Jesus, and God. Ah, the Divine Trinity. I could be wrong about Wanda's pregnancy being derived from the TV show, but it sure comes off, like so many things, as an afterthought. Why not just have Spawn sleep with Wanda as Terry here, unless it was thought of later, then that possibly made sense. It sure seems like something Simmons' face Spawn wouldn't have batted a glowing green eye at doing. And no, the baby isn't Terry's, because Wanda makes it very clear that they haven't slept together lately. All in all, though, it's a fine issue. The ending is really the important part. I appreciate how much this family has changed since we last saw them. They haven't been the same since Cyan's kidnapping. She's having nightmares still directly linked to Spawn, and we get to experience a really chilling one where the devil himself is invading her mind. This tells us a lot without coming out and explaining things. There's more to these dreams than post-traumatic stress, and it looks like the devil is using the one piece of leverage he has left against Spawn, that last shred of humanity. He might accept he's not Al Simmons, but I'll bet he cares about Cyan and Wanda still. Side gripe, why does Satan or whatever he calls himself have to look so much like Jason Wynn? That is so confusing! Terry is just downright mean and unreasonable to Wanda here, snapping at her for no reason and angry with her for thinking Cyan needs expensive therapy when she's clearly not fully okay. It came off as forced drama initially, but we see how close he is to a nervous breakdown, and given everything he went through with Al back from the dead and threatening to destroy his family, that makes perfect sense. That letter from a couple issues ago also complained about pointless, generic splash pages that do nothing to progress the story, and that I'm seeing even more than usual. There's a pin-up just to get Spawn in the issue, and they might as well have left out the narration boxes. They're just mood fluff about it being, quote, one of those nights where anything can happen, and I can't even tell whose perspective that's from. There's also a lot of that here too. Narration that is sometimes Wanda's thoughts, sometimes a third-person omniscient narrator, and sometimes I can't really tell. Suddenly switching from boxes to boxless text makes it especially confusing. Now, if McFarlane had all this planned out himself, then my comments are a little unfair, but my main criticism stands either way. You wait this long with that much filler to pay things off, and you lose your reader's attention, and more importantly, their faith. Signed, Captain Logan.